My name is Elara Quinn, and I am 38 years old. For 7 years, I built the skeleton beneath Nexel Systems, the lines of code and quiet logic that kept its supply chain empire moving while others collected applause. I was the kind of person who spoke only when precision required it, the one who stayed until 2 in the morning because leaving something half-fixed felt like betrayal. I'd spent 7 years making other people look brilliant. That morning, one of them decided I was replaceable. That morning, the quarterly review filled the main auditorium with the low hum of projectors and nervous anticipation. My manager, Brett Landon, took the stage in his usual tailored certainty. His tie gleamed. His smile did not. "Your work," he began, tapping the microphone as if testing its cruelty, "has been mediocre at best." The room froze. 100 employees, engineers, analysts, designers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. On the massive screen behind him, the performance charts rolled upward for every department except one, mine. "I don't even know what we're paying you for," he continued, each word deliberate, sharpened to humiliate. My throat tightened, but I stayed still. On that same screen, I could already see the faint flicker of the operations dashboard, the one still running on architecture I had written line by line. Brett turned toward me, voice rising. "If you're ashamed, you should leave." Something inside me settled. The anger, the shock, even the fear all dissolved into a single, clear thought. I rose slowly. My chair scraped against the polished floor, cutting through the silence. Every eye followed me. "Check the 47 projects," I said. 5 words. Nothing more. For a heartbeat. No one moved. Then, behind Brett, the dashboard began to glitch. Notifications stacked like dominoes. Audit log. Update author E. Quinn. One after another, 47 entries appeared in bright red. Gasps rippled across the auditorium. Brett's hand hovered uselessly over the keyboard. The room's silence felt electric, not fear, not awe, but recognition. I turned and walked toward the exit, each step measured, unhurried. By the time the elevator doors closed behind me, the hum of alarms had begun. The systems were speaking, and for once, everyone was listening. When I joined Nexel Systems, we were 12 people sharing coffee mugs and optimism. The walls were bare, the servers loud, and the air smelled like wet concrete and possibility. I was 29 and certain that solving impossible problems was the purest kind of joy. Integration is our nightmare. The founder, Aaron Layton, told me on my first day, "Nothing talks to anything else." "It will," I said, and meant it. For the next 7 years, I built quiet miracles, systems that learned to listen to one another, scripts that translated chaos into order. The company grew from a basement startup into a downtown tower, and my code followed it there, invisible, indispensable, never broken. People stopped asking how things worked. They just assumed they always would. My fingerprints faded beneath layers of updates and new managers. By the time Brett arrived, the architecture was so stable it looked effortless. "Legacy code," he called it in his first team meeting. "We need something modern, something visible." "It already works," I said. He smiled in that managerial way, all teeth. "No understanding. Working isn't enough anymore. The board wants transformation. Transformation from stable to unstable." I asked. The room went still. A few engineers hid their smiles behind coffee cups. Brett's expression didn't change, but his tone did. "Careful. Elara. Attitude doesn't scale." After that, he started assigning the flashiest projects to newer hires' interfaces with blinking colors, dashboards full of motion. They presented to executives while my work ran silently in the background, keeping everything from collapsing. When one of them said, "Your systems are so boring," I just nodded. Boring meant no fires to put out. Boring meant planes didn't fall from the sky. Trucks didn't stop mid-route. Invoices didn't vanish. But in a company addicted to spectacle, reliability was invisible. By the time Brett's promotion became official, He'd stopped using my name entirely. I was the back-end person, the quiet one, the relic. And that was how someone who built 70% of Nexel's operations became the woman her manager could forget in public. Security waited by the doorway as I slid the last of my notebooks into a cardboard box. The room felt hollow without the hum of my monitor, as if the air itself knew something essential had been unplugged. Maya Ortiz, from Human Resources, stood beside me, her voice low enough to stay off record. "Everyone knows what you built." "Elara," I smiled faintly. Knowing isn't the same as saying. Her eyes softened. "You don't deserve this." "I'll live," I said, though the words didn't sound like mine. She hesitated before handing me a sleek folder stamped with Nexel's logo. "Termination acknowledgement," she murmured. "Just sign where it says Employee of Record." The phrasing caught me. Employee of Record, as if everything else I had created were just rumor. I signed anyway, each stroke deliberate, unshaken. My name looked oddly small beneath the company seal. Brett passed in the hallway, pretending to check his phone. "Good luck." "Elara," he said, the tone polite and hollow, like an automated message. "Luck's a system error," I replied quietly. Not sure if he heard me. The elevator ride down was silent except for the soft rustle of my box shifting in my arms. The security guard nodded once professional sympathy. Nothing more. Outside, the glass doors reflected a gray sky that threatened rain. I hadn't seen daylight at this hour in years. My badge still hung around my neck, useless now. I handed it over and stepped into the drizzle. By the time I reached my apartment, the storm had turned steady. I set the box on the kitchen counter and realized it was the first Thursday afternoon I'd been home before sunset in 7 years. The quiet was too large. The refrigerator hummed. A drop of water slid down my sleeve and landed on the table beside my old mug, the one I used during overnight deployments. I traced the rim with my finger, feeling the groove worn smooth from years of restless work. For the first time in a long while, the world was still. It started 3 days after I left. At first, a message from Jared, one of the junior engineers. "Hey, sorry to bother you. Do you still have the old integration files? The portal's lagging again?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. "Everything's on the internal repository. Use the transition notes." He replied with a single word. "Right." Then nothing. By the next day, my phone lit up again, this time Priya from Analytics. "Quality dashboards aren't syncing. Data's repeating across regions." I didn't answer. I had left Nexel properly. I had handed off every credential, every line of documentation. Understanding, though, was something no file could hold. Later that night, the first news article appeared: client transactions delayed by technical glitch at Nexel Systems. The headline didn't surprise me. The phrasing did: technical glitch. The system wasn't glitching. It was confused, searching for the logic that used to guide it. Another text arrived, from an unknown number. "Brett's losing it. He says the root cause is legacy code, but we checked the issues in his new modules." I set the phone face down on the table. The rain outside matched the rhythm in my chest, steady, unavoidable. Around midnight, Maya called. Her voice carried the tone of someone balancing sympathy and caution. "Off the record," she said softly. "The CEO's asking who can stabilize the infrastructure. No one seems to understand how it all fits." I could hear the hum of the office behind her, the echo of chaos leaking through the phone. "I left everything they needed," I said. "I know," she whispered. That might be the problem. After she hung up, I opened my laptop out of habit. The Nexel login screen glowed faintly before timing out access revoked, just as it should be. Still, somewhere in those tangled networks, I knew the systems I'd built were trying to call home. By the end of the week, the headlines had multiplied. Nexel faces service disruptions for third consecutive day. The stories quoted anonymous insiders, but I could read the truth between every line they were guessing, blindfolded. I opened my old drive, the one I hadn't touched since the morning of my dismissal. Inside were folders named for the projects that had built Nexel's backbone: Atlas, Meridian, Harborline, Pulse. 47 in total, each one a piece of the company's pulse. And mine. For hours. I worked in silence. I pulled logs, uptime histories, dependency maps, everything that proved how each part had connected to the next. No bitterness. Just precision. Each file bore my digital signature. Author E. Quinn, time-stamped and traceable through every deployment. When I was done, I didn't feel triumph, only a calm certainty. The next morning, I met Maya at a quiet cafe near the waterfront. She looked exhausted, sleepless eyes, tense shoulders. "They're falling apart in there," she said quietly. "Brett's trying to shift blame, but legal's asking questions about authorship. I told them I might know someone who kept records, that someone being me." Her smile was tired. "You were always meticulous. Elara. You never erased a trail." She slid a business card across the table. "Daniel Shu, corporate counsel. He's discreet. If you want your work protected, he's the one." I met Daniel later that afternoon in his small corner office, walls lined with unopened law books. He spoke like a man who measured every word. "You're not suing," he clarified after scanning my files. "You're documenting. I'm proving ownership," I said. He nodded. "That's smarter. Truth lasts longer than lawsuits." I handed him a drive labeled 47 proofs. He weighed it in his palm like something heavier than plastic. "You're not angry," he said finally. "Most people are furious when they walk in here." I replied. "Now I'm accurate." He almost smiled. Accuracy terrifies people more than rage. When I left his office, the air outside felt cleaner, sharper. I hadn't built a case. I'd built a mirror. The call came just after midnight. My phone vibrated across the counter, the name Martin Reeves glowing on the screen. I hesitated before answering. CEOs didn't call at that hour unless the ground was already on fire. "Elara," he began, his voice low and taut. "I hope I'm not waking you." "You are," I said, "but I assume you wouldn't care if the building was burning." He gave a short breath of a laugh. Not humor, just exhaustion. "Our largest client is threatening to terminate their contract within 72 hours. They say our systems are unreliable." I let the silence stretch until it became heavy. "That sounds serious." "It is," he said. "Brett tells me the architecture you built was outdated. That's why stop there." I interrupted. "You and I both know it's not the architecture that's outdated. It's the leadership." The pause on his end was long enough to taste. Then, quietly, "We need you back. I can offer a temporary consulting contract and a 15% raise." I almost laughed. 15%, I repeated, as if testing the words for irony. "Martin, I left behind 7 years of architecture that keeps your company alive. You're losing millions by the day, and you think I'm worth 15% more than my insulted salary." He didn't reply. I could hear the hum of his office late-night printers, murmured voices, the sound of a ship taking on water. "Here's what I want," I said. "Triple my previous compensation, full technical authority, public acknowledgement of authorship, and I don't work under Brett again. Elara." "That's my offer," I said evenly. "You know it's fair. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for accuracy." He sighed, the sound of pride cracking. "We'll discuss it tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I said, "but your systems won't wait that long." I ended the call before he could answer. The room went silent except for the rain against the window. Somewhere in that building, Martin Reeves had just realized the truth. Brett never could. I wasn't returning to be rescued. I was returning on my own terms. When I stepped back into Nexel's lobby, the air felt thinner, almost metallic. It wasn't nostalgia, it was tension. The kind that hums under fluorescent lights when too many people pretend everything is fine. They had cleared a temporary workspace for me in the operations wing. My new badge read consultant, as if distance could undo what they'd done. The clock was already ticking, 72 hours left. Brett appeared before I even logged in. His smile was tight, too bright. "Good to have you back." "Elara, we're all counting on you. Counting on me," I repeated. "You made it clear you didn't think I counted at all." He flinched but didn't reply. The silence between us felt cleaner than any apology could. A few hours later, Jared, the junior developer who used to shadow my late-night shifts, approached quietly. "I need to tell you something," he murmured, glancing toward Brett's office. "When you left, he deleted your transition logs. Said they were redundant, but they had your dependency maps. That's why everything broke." I stopped typing. "You're sure?" He nodded. I saw him empty the folder myself. My pulse tightened, but I forced my voice steady. "Thank you, Jared. Don't repeat this conversation. Not yet." I could have marched straight to legal, exposed Brett, ended his career before sunrise, but the company's systems were still failing, and the people trapped inside them didn't deserve to burn with him. So I stayed. I coded until my wrists ached, rewriting the frameworks from memory. Line by line, every keystroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they'd buried under titles and meetings. Near dawn, Brett hovered again, pretending to check progress. "Almost there?" he asked. "Almost," I said. "Next time you delete something, make sure you understand what it does first." His mouth opened, then closed again. I kept typing. By sunrise, the error rates began to fall, the red graphs turning pale green. The hum in the room shifted from panic to possibility. For the first time in days, Nexel exhaled. By the time dawn crept through the glass walls of the operations floor, the dashboards had turned green. No alerts, no lag, no red lines screaming for attention, just a steady hum of stability. The building felt different, like the tension had lifted an inch above the air but hadn't quite let go. At 8 o'clock sharp, Martin called an all-hands meeting in the auditorium. I walked in last, the same rows of chairs, the same projector. But this time, my name wasn't an accusation. Martin stood at the podium, sleeves rolled up, voice measured but proud. 72 hours ago, our systems were in free fall. Today, uptime is 100%, client transfers are complete, and the losses have stopped. He paused, turning to the screen behind him. A single chart appeared, each recovery phase labeled by project code. One stood out, EQ47. Underneath, the tag read Author E. Quinn. The room went silent. I didn't move. Martin continued. "Every stabilization, every fix ties back to Elara's original architecture. Her systems carried us when we didn't even understand how." I could feel Brett's eyes on me. He sat near the front, face pale, lips pressed into a line that tried to look professional and failed. He spoke first, his voice low. "These results, they're not entirely her doing." My team Martin turned toward him. "Your team deleted her transition logs." "Correct, I reviewed the system audit last night." "It's all there." Brett's composure cracked. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," Martin said quietly. "It was negligence." A murmur rippled through the audience. Engineers, analysts, people who had watched me sit quietly in the background for years. Now they stared at the screen where my work spoke for itself. I said nothing. There was nothing left to add. Martin closed the presentation. "From this moment on, every contributor's name will be documented, every credit recorded. No more invisible architects." When the applause started, I didn't stand. I just watched the numbers on the dashboard proof glowing in green. Martin asked to see me the next morning. His assistant led me into his office, the same room where I'd once been ignored during meetings that dissected my work without ever mentioning my name. He stood by the window, jacket off, eyes tired but clearer than I remembered. "You were right," he said simply. "About Brett, about the systems, about everything. I didn't need to be right." I replied, "I just needed the work to speak honestly." He gestured toward the conference table, where a new contract waited beside a steaming cup of coffee. "We'd like you to stay. Full-time. Director of Systems Integrity. You'd have authority to rebuild our documentation and authorship protocols from the ground up. The title hit harder than I expected, not as flattery, but as responsibility. You want me to fix how recognition works, I said. I want to make sure no one like you ever gets erased again, he answered. I studied the contract. Triple compensation, executive status, full control over infrastructure policy. All the things I'd demanded when they thought they could bargain. I'll do it, I said, but under one condition. He raised an eyebrow, which is I won't just protect my credit. I'll make sure every line of code, every contribution, carries a name. Visibility shouldn't depend on volume. Martin smiled small, genuine. You were always building systems for people, not pride. Later that afternoon, I sat with a group of engineers drafting the new framework authorship tracking, mentorship channels, transparent version logs. Every voice had weight. Every name mattered. When the first module went live, I opened the header file. For the first time, my name was there in plain text Elara Quinn, followed by the names of every developer who'd helped bring the company back from collapse. I hit save. For once, the system wasn't just running correctly. It was telling the truth. 3 weeks passed before I realized I'd stopped checking the system dashboards first thing in the morning. The alerts were gone. The graphs stayed steady. Stability had replaced noise. I spent that Saturday at the waterfront, the air heavy with sea salt and coffee. Pike Place buzzed behind me, vendors shouting over the rain. But I sat by the railing with my laptop open and a calm I hadn't felt in years. An email blinked into view. Jared had written first. The new framework's live. Everyone's name shows up on deployment now. I added yours to the header for the mentorship module, figured it was fitting. Another came seconds later from Priya. The clients know what happened. Elara. They asked about you during the last review. Martin told them the truth. And then one more. From an address I hadn't seen since the early days. Aaron Layton, the founder who once hired me with nothing but faith in my logic. You built Nexel twice, once with code, once with conviction. Don't underestimate which version will last longer. I closed the laptop and leaned back, watching the reflection of gray clouds on the water. The rain had slowed to a mist that blurred the city's sharp edges. Somewhere behind me, the market's fishmongers shouted, the sound oddly grounding. The last few months felt like another lifetime humiliation, collapse, reclamation. I thought of Brett's silence since his dismissal, of Martin's awkward gratitude, of Maya's tired smile when she saw the new authorship policy published. I took out my old notebook, the same one that had traveled from the basement startup to the tower boardroom. On the last page, I wrote a single line in ink that bled slightly from the drizzle. Some systems need to crash before they can be rebuilt right. Then I closed it, tucked it under my arm, and stood. The city was loud again, but this time, I didn't need to listen for validation. The noise was just life continuing, and for the first time in years, I walked away without looking back.